Welcome everybody to the Model 3 Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Page, and tonight's episode is brought to you by Duliban Insurance, which has developed a unique discounted group insurance product for all Tesla owners, including Tesla owners in the recent release of the Model 3. So if you live in Ontario, Canada, and looking for the best price and coverage on your Tesla, give Duliban Insurance a call at 1-855-385-4226 or visit our website at Duliban Insurance, that's spelled Duliban, insurance.com/Tesla. Big thanks to our sponsors at Duliban. Well, we have lots to talk about tonight. I want to bring on our guests. First people on the line is Mr. Eric Camacho. I haven't seen you in a little bit. Welcome back to the show again, Eric.
Thanks, guys. Good evening, everybody.
And our other regular here is Ian Pavelko. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing well. How are you? How is everybody?
All good. We're surviving some of this weather that's coming on. Of course,
yeah,
it's been pretty hot. That. And last but not least, we have Michael Bodner from Florida again. How you doing, Mike?
Doing well, Trev. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us again, guys. Well, wow, it's certainly been a very busy week in Tesla news, so let's just dive right in here. First thing on the list, of course, we're talking about production numbers. So let's get into this. So Q2, so that's basically from April to the end of June. Tesla delivered 53,338 or 39. I'm off by one digit. I apologize if I didn't get that 100% right. 28,578 of those were Model 3s. Yay! So it looks like the ramp is certainly increasing at this point. Model S and X combined account for 24,761 deliveries, or production, I should say. Elon also stated that production is expected to exceed 6,000 per week by the end of August. So we're still looking at increasing that ramp as they go. Now deliveries, the numbers are a little different on this thing here because I have to try and remember to remind people that production and deliveries are two separate things as far as Tesla is concerned. Just to reiterate, production, of course, is how many cars they build in a particular time period. Deliveries are how many cars they actually do a final delivery, and that's basically delivered to the customer, payment's been made and collected, paperwork is signed, cars registered. That is the only time that Tesla can actually count that delivery as a profit at this point, because unlike other car manufacturers, when they finish building a car, when it's put on a car carrier or train, that's when the transaction is actually finished, and the customer is not the end user, it's the dealer. So there's always a discrepancy. So when they produce cars and when they send out deliveries, they deliver some of them, but some of them are still considered in transit. We'll talk about that in a second here. So Q2 deliveries, 18,444 Model 3s, 10,930 Model S. Maybe I should put my reading glasses on. And 11,370 Model X. This is the first time I think I've seen Model X outsell or outdeliver the Model S. Keep in mind, Tesla's production for S and X is really geared to about 100,000 cars per year. So they've kind of figured that's where the demand kind of lies at this point. That's interesting to see that the number's exceeding a little bit on the Model X, which I think in some ways proves that the Model X is certainly quite popular. I know it is here in Ontario. So the last little bit here is what's in transit. So these are the cars that can't be counted because they were not physically delivered at the end of the quarter. They will be counted in the next quarter, in Q3. So in transit, we have 11,166 Model 3s. That's a huge number. Compared to Model S and X combined. Of course, they didn't break it out, but it's 3,892 Model S and X. That's a huge number of Model 3s. That's just crazy. So I just want to take some time here and just discuss some of these numbers here with the panel and give us your thoughts. So you guys need to chime in here and give the viewership what you think is going on. Crickets? Anyone?
I'll I'll go first. So first, it's really great to see that the company is able to hit their 5,000 Model 3 produced per week mark. I know it's really kind of just a starting point for them. I know they want to try to hit a higher number than that. But to know that we're at least at a point where we're seeing that threshold being met in the month of June and early July is really fantastic. But that being said, to see that many cars being delivered, to know that there's actually over 11,000 Model 3s still in transit, sort of gets you the idea that we're really going to see a lot of these reservation holders start to really kind of share their joy about getting their car. S and X have always had those great production numbers, but now Model 3 is getting to that point where we're seeing more and more people get their cars in a very quicker period, especially after they've opened up the reservation holders to be able to customize their car. So I know people like Ian are still waiting there anxiously, but I think if at this rate we're seeing these numbers, it's going to be a very, very great second half of the year for Tesla.
Very cool.
I'm waiting anxiously to actually see someone get their hands on either a performance or an all-wheel drive car. That will be a milestone I am greatly looking forward to. I don't care who it is. I'm hoping it's DNC Ryan. Props to him. He deserves to get the first one off the line. But anybody at this point who can get one. The other thing, too, is has anybody seen a large number of all-wheel drive VINs being registered? Because I haven't heard any news on that.
I have seen, if you watch the Model 3 tracker on Twitter, there definitely have been a couple of all-wheel drive pushes. Nothing huge, though.
Yeah, that concerns me. I mean, we know that that's still kind of getting up to speed. And I mean, when I say concern, it's not something I'm personally concerned about. It's just that I'm waiting for that signal. I'm waiting to see a big kablam block of dual motor VINs come out. That would be another really cool thing to see.
I did see there is a Twitter account called Model 3 VINs, and they do seem to report. I just saw one of them posted today. I think they registered some 400 extra VINs, so it seems to be still coming. Let's see here. All right. One of the other little bits here too is that Tesla has said in their formal. By the way, if anybody's actually listening out there who really wants to read these press releases that Tesla puts out, you need to go to the website called IR. It's ir.tesla.com. That's where you're going to find all of their information. So yeah, that's where to get that information. Let's see here. Tesla did state that their reservations are still holding at 320,000, even though they sold 28,386 Model 3s delivered to date. So that's the cumulative at this point. So yeah, it's interesting that they're still going. I think part of that is the fact that the reservations are still increasing because once these cars get actually into people's hands, that you got your neighbor. There's this snowball effect where you've got the neighbors. They see the car, they know what it is, or they're trying to find out what it is, and they put the reservations in. So the reservation count is still increasing. So I don't see any of this slowing. It kind of bothers me that some of the shorts, I mean, I've seen some Twitter comments where people come in and they say, oh, there's no more backlog on these Model 3s, and once the backlog is done, there's not going to be any more cars to be sold. Now, I'm not seeing any evidence of that. I'm still seeing that, things are still increasing. And keep in mind, they haven't even hit Europe yet, right? So we have more stuff coming. Now, Elon, let's see here. What else did they say? I also think that we're going to see an increase in reservations, of course, once the test drives officially begin, which are supposed to happen sometime later this month or next month. All-wheel drive and performance cars are expected in the store shortly, so if any of you have any information on that, that'd be great to know. But so far, I know that people have been called for test drives, so I think it's starting to happen. But it doesn't look like that's all-wheel drive or performance cars at this point. It's still just kind of the regular first production car at this point. So you keep an eye on that as far as what that's going on.
And Trev, I would add, it's still by all accounts a fairly expensive car right now. Once the standard battery comes out and people see that, I think it's a whole nother wave of people who are going to reserve and look at getting the car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Michael. I think for a lot of people, it's not real till the $35,000 car shows up. I think that's what a lot of people are holding back on. They keep saying that being pushed and thinking, like, well, like maybe it's never going to come out. I mean, we all know the disinformation campaigns going around. So the public who hasn't got their finger on the pulse here might not believe that that's really happening. And once it does, I think you're going to have a whole new wave of reservations. At that point, it really gets real for a lot of people who want, the entry level car.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, it's encouraging. I like the fact that we're seeing this. I do want to talk about one thing though, and I think it's a little bit disingenuous, or maybe it's a little. I don't know what it is. I think that it just seems to me that every time there's a quarter coming up and Tesla's in the throes of producing cars, they always make this last minute push to try and get their production numbers up. I wish it was more. What's the word I'm looking for? I wish it was a little more organic in the sense that maybe production should just occur kind of naturally. I understand they're trying to push and stuff, but it just, if they keep repeating that all the time, it makes it look like they can't meet the production numbers on a normal organic scale. Of course, they're not talking about that on S and X anymore because they've reached peak S and X as far as production's concerned. So, I don't know. That's just my personal feeling on that. I just wish that it wasn't always a push. I understand at the end of a quarter, because of the way that Tesla works, they're trying to push and deliver as many cars as possible. I just wish that it wasn't both. I was more hoping that it would be more organic on both sides of the coin. So, anyways, the other thing I want to talk about is, Michael, I'm going to let you take point on this because Model 3 just got a whole bunch of new software features, of course, and new software updates. So maybe you can tell the viewers here what to expect in their cars shortly.
All right. Well, with version 2018.24.1, we've added 4 new features to the car: summon, Wi-Fi, cabin overheat protection, and speed limit setting. So start with summon. I'll give myself a shameless plug. I put together a video called "The Great Tesla Summon Race." Go ahead
I saw
and check
that.
it
It's
out.
hilarious.
It's
We'll put a link in we'll put a link in the video description so you guys can watch it.
Thanks. And I'll say, not shown in the video, is pretty fun. We brought the cars to a common drag racing spot for kids. I promise I've never actually raced there. And we're lining up the 2 cars in what looks like a drag race. So you've got a security guard walking over saying, like, what's going on here? What's going on here? And he noticed the cars were driving themselves with no one in them. And he absolutely freaked out. I think we definitely gained another Tesla fan there, setting up for the 1 mile an hour race. But it's pretty funny. Check it out. Anyway, it's, Trevor and I were talking about it. It's kind of like a party trick feature. And sure enough, literally the day after I get it, I go out, run into a restaurant, it's pouring, I come out, my car's parked in a spot that has a huge puddle around the car. So actually an immediate practical application to back the car out of the spot and not step in a puddle. Thought that was pretty neat. So really, a lot of fun with Summon, and you guys will be getting it on your Model 3s soon if you get the update. Wi-Fi is going to be great, I think, as they get more and more cars on the road, just the data strain, pushing out all the software updates. It's going to be huge, getting more people on Wi-Fi. So that's a welcomed update, especially for people who have poor service in their homes, especially in their garages, maybe. You won't have to worry about that with your updates. Cabin overheat protection. Obviously, Trev's had this on his X since the day he got it. I will say today was my first day in the office with it. I burned through 20 miles of range in 10 hours. And that kept the car from a normal 134 degrees inside to about 105. So I'm kind of wavering back and forth in my head if that's worth it or not, or if it's more of a feature you kind of turn on if you're worried you might leave pets or a kid in the car. So I'm thinking through that one a little bit more. And speed limit mode, the last new feature, that kind of came on the tail of that car accident with the teenagers who were going 116 miles an hour and drove the car into a wall, letting you control the speed from the app and setting a max speed. So pretty neat feature as well. Great safety feature. But really great update. So it should be rolling out pretty soon for everybody.
I'm looking forward to seeing that on the 3. Listen, I have a question for you. Since you did a test with cabin overheat protection, that's literally something I've never actually used in my car, even though it's there. If I sit in my car, I just leave the AC running. Have you noticed when you run it, whether the AC turns on and off, or is it mostly just the fan, or like you know what I'm talking about? Like, does the AC run continuously, or does it run for a little bit and then turn off and run for a little bit?
So I don't know the exact answer to that because the car's parked nowhere near my actual office. I park pretty far away. But there's three settings. One is off, obviously, and then there's two different on settings. One is on with AC and one is on with just fan.
Ah, okay, that's what it was.
So I had it on the on with AC to kind of go for the full test, and I'll play around with the on with fan as well just to see, if there's less of a mileage hit. I'm sure there is, and how well that performs.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I'm gonna have to do a little test of that on mine. I'm just curious to see if there's any differences between the S, how the S and the X perform with the 3. Of course, with the 3 is considerably different in terms of software and HVAC type systems. So yeah, thanks for answering that. I was very curious about that as to what's going on. Let's see here. Yeah, and Wi-Fi. Man, long time coming for that feature. That's for sure. That'll make getting some of the software updates a little bit faster. I would hope, anyways. I know in my case, I have a Wi-Fi hotspot in my backyard, and I don't use it all that much except for the car. The car is positioned just such a way that as soon as it comes home, it just hops on there. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing some of the differences there. Any other comments before we move on? This show might be a little bit shorter than some of the others here because it wasn't quite as much normal news as what happens. Let's see here. One of the things I wanted to talk about, of course, and it's on everybody's lips these days, is this concept of the federal tax credit in the U.S. So the question is, has it actually started a phase-out process? Because everyone knows, well, in case you didn't, that once Tesla sells the 200,000th or delivers the 200,000 car in the U.S., it triggers the phase-out of the federal tax credit. So they get 2 quarters where you get the full tax credit, $7,500, as long as you qualify, because it's not a rebate. Then it falls to 50%, and then a further 50%, and after that you get nothing. So I know a lot of people are still counting on getting the federal tax credit. I know there's a lot of noise on the internet where people are talking about wanting to get the federal tax credit, but only want the base model of the car. So being the fact that the Model 3 base price of $35,000 is not going to be in production until at least later this year. A lot of people are worrying that they're not going to get the full $7,500. So my personal opinion here, and I don't have all the numbers on this, but I just, and I think we discussed this on the last podcast, is all of indications are certainly showing that Tesla was lining things up to try and time the federal tax credit phase out as closely as possible, namely taking essentially what amounts to all of May's deliveries and shifting them to Canada and into June, or May's production, and most of the deliveries going to Canada for the month of June. We saw thousands of Model 3s in backlots being held. And, of course, then the floodgates started opening just before July 1st. So I think, until we get further information from Tesla on this during the financial call, probably the first week of August, right now, I think the consensus is I think it's actually begun. If you guys have any thoughts on that, I'd like to hear it, but that's just kind of the way I'm kind of reading the tea leaves.
So I've seen a few different estimates, too, actually. One is Troy on the forums,
Yes.
I think Bloomberg as well. Both believe that they hit 205,000 cars before the end of June. I can't imagine they'd top the 200K mark by 5,000 cars right at the end of the quarter. And even Troy said, first of all, he said he hopes he's wrong. And he's got some variability in his numbers, about 92% accuracy on some of them. So you play around with about 8% his number, it's really close. My gut feeling is it's like they literally probably hit it today. Again, my gut feeling. If they hit it in June, obviously the 7,500 lasts until the end of September. But for those who are configuring right now, I believe the configuration screen I just saw on Twitter, we were going back and forth with it. It still shows the $7,500 savings on the US configuration screen of the Model 3. And if you configure today, I'm not sure it's a given you're going to get your car by September 30th. So that leads me to believe it's probably still good till December 31st. But, obviously we just won't know till it's officially reported.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do that because I know, of course, you mentioned in the configurator, we have the same situation here in Canada that even though the all-wheel drive and the performance version of the Model 3 are not on the official list of cars eligible for the EVIP, our rebate up here. Tesla is still showing that there's some savings on there. They're still showing the $14,000 savings on there. So I can't put all of my faith in what Tesla puts on their website as far as how that's going to work out, because I'm seeing the same evidence here.
Trev, can I pause you for just a sec?
Yeah,
You just said something very interesting. Did I hear that right? If you configure in Ontario, they're showing the $14,000 credit even on the performance model?
Yeah, what they do is that when whatever model you pick and you put all your options in on there, specifically on the 3, because it doesn't show on the S and X, there's a section in there that shows what rebates you qualify for. And they basically put a disclaimer in there that you get $14,000, even though it's not officially on the list. Now, there's been a lot of discussion on the internet, of course. We're going down a bit of a rat hole here, but a lot of people on the internet are asking, well, should I order a Model 3 all-wheel drive for performance? Well, let's forget the performance car because it doesn't qualify no matter what you do. But let's just talk about the all-wheel drive, right? So should I order one now? Do I still get the Ontario rebate? And the thing is, and some people have talked to the Ministry of Transportation here. They've actually physically called them and said, what's the situation? And basically what it really amounts to is that if it's not on the list, it doesn't qualify. And secondly, the only time it actually qualifies, you can actually submit the paperwork, is when you take delivery of the car and the paperwork is done and it's registered in your name. You can't pre-fill out the paperwork and send it in. So we're caught in this no man's land of what's going on with the rebate, considering the changeover in government and the cancellation of cap and trade, which is a good segue to what we're going to discuss next. Mm-hmm. Plus a lot of people that are counting on this $14,000 to order the car, plus people that have been waiting the longest time to order all-wheel drive and don't know whether the car's going to qualify. So my personal opinion, what I've been telling people out there, I think what the MTO is kind of doing is not probably accepting any more paperwork from manufacturers as far as eligibility until they get some kind of clarification. Because to me, it doesn't make sense to say, okay, we got the paperwork from Tesla, we'll put it on the list just to have it canceled immediately by the government 2 days or a week later, whatever the case may be. So even though they said that they want to cancel cap and trade, and they've started the process of canceling cap and trade in Ontario, which is also responsible for collecting the funds that are dispersed as part of the rebates. It's not taxpayer money. It comes from polluters. So that's why I posted, this policy change with the government saying that the cap and trade is going to be canceled and dismantled. That effectively means the end of EV rebates, because without cap and trade, there's no funds to pay for the EV rebates. I mean, it's just the way it is. Whether we get grandfathered in, I think there will be some kind of grandfathering period in there. Ford did say at one point that he was not going to go back and retroactively cancel anything. So to me, it just basically means, look, you got to have the car in your possession. That's the only time you can actually submit the paperwork. So it remains to be seen what's going on. But that was one of the questions, of course, that somebody else was going to ask here. So we're kind of going down this road anyway. So, do you have any?
Can I add some comments from the U.S. perspective,
Sure.
if I may? So, for those of you who may not know, earlier this year, the U.S. government, our Congress, went ahead and passed a tax bill that, for all of its bells and whistles, one major component of the bill was that there was a consideration by some lawmakers to go ahead and stop the tax incentive that would come for those who buy electric vehicles here in the U.S. So it would have affected tens of thousands of people that were awaiting delivery of a Model S, a Model X, or even the Model 3. And so thankfully, in the final iteration of that bill that was passed by Congress several months ago, the program was allowed to continue as it's currently constituted. Now, with that in mind, there are a lot of folks who are looking at the 7,500 and saying, look, I want to be able to capitalize on that maximum number, knowing that the program at some point could either be cease to exist, or we start seeing that reduction in the actual savings. And so there are a lot of people who sort of ask the question, well, do I not wait for my low-end Model 3? I know I can save 7,500. Maybe I just get the long range model now. I could go do a motor. I mean, all these various questions are being asked. So for those who are waiting maybe for the entry level Model 3 at $35,000 plus, if you're waiting for the tax savings, really look into the possible options you have now about what can you get today. If you've been asked to configure and you feel like, you know what, it's going to be X amount more for this version of the 3, and then you can figure you qualify for your tax savings in 2019, and the numbers are reasonably close after the tax incentive, then maybe you want to pull the trigger. But there are certainly those who say, you know what, I really can't afford to go for a $50,000 car. I'm going to stick with what I have for $35,000. At the end of the day, you're still saving money, going for the low end versus something else and trying to get the 7,500. So it is a tough decision for a lot of folks who are really relying on it. But bear in mind, even if you're getting half of the 7,500 come 2019, and maybe you're in the tail end of it where you're just now hopping into the Model 3 configurator and you're looking at a 2019 delivery, even if you get a small fraction, any savings is better than nothing. So for our friends north of the border in Canada, you know, our hope here in America is that you guys continue to have that program. Again, a lot of the funding is going to be contingent on whether or not that continues. But you know, if you have the option to configure and get your car delivered, and you can get any savings you can now, you know, maybe it's worth going and doing it just because you'd rather get some savings versus nothing.
I would agree. I've been monitoring some of the sites out there, and there seems to be a lot of articles from the news media up here that are really taking the new government to task about not having some kind of green policy in place. Just canceling it unilaterally is a big mistake. So it seems to be most of the news outlets are on board with that. Doesn't seem to be as much division on that subject. But like I said, this is not a political podcast, so we're not really going to get into all the nitty-gritty details. But you know, the bottom line here is that this is it's a catalyst. A rebate or a tax incentive is a catalyst to get someone to look at something they wouldn't normally look at. Let's face it, EVs have a higher cost of entry. We haven't reached cost parity with gasoline cars yet on the drivetrain situation. Gasoline, someone could make a case for that up here, maybe not so much in the U.S. Of course, now with this new government coming in, they're supposed to cut the gas prices, but they spiked back up on the weekend. Of course, it was a long weekend, so that kind of happens anyways, anywhere. So it remains to be seen what's actually going to transpire at the end of the day, but I think it's too soon. It's too soon to cancel any incentives at this point because we have some good momentum. We have some excellent numbers in Canada that just came out, where EV sales now have reached 3% of all cars sold, in Ontario, I should say. That's something Ken and I will discuss on the next show. So it's looking really promising, but this latest switchover and tactic that's taking, it's not looking very promising. So again, my feeling is until we hear otherwise, or some clarification from the government, if you're looking at ordering a car, you could make your deposit today. Well, not your deposit, but actually confirm your order. And if you find yourself needing to back out, at least, let's say you lose the $14,000. At that point, you have to make a decision. Can I afford the car, even if I don't have the $14,000 rebate, or do I can't afford the car? Maybe I just take the $3,200 hit and just back out of the order. I don't know. That's a personal decision somebody has to make. But right now, the MTO says everything is still in place. It's still effective, but the date that matters on your rebate is the day you take delivery. It's not when you place your order. It has to be registered in your name, so that kind of explains that. Let's take this opportunity here to move on. We'll move on to the question and answer period. So we'll take the first question here from someone named Nuke Sean on Twitter, and he had asked the $14,000 rebate is guaranteed on the Model 3 if it was ordered today in Ontario, so we just kind of covered that. He had a second question here. He says, when will the Chatham adapter be compatible with the Model 3? That's a really good question. I know that Tesla last year during the release candidate testing phase, they were spotted testing Model 3s at Chatham chargers in San Francisco. So I don't know what the holdup is with the Chatham adapter is. I know that Chatham adapter is hardware and firmware, and with a recent software update that I got on my car, there's a function in there where will update an adapter if you plug it into the car without having to take it into Tesla, because prior you had to take it into Tesla and they plug it into some kind of device and did a firmware update. But now the car can actually do it on your behalf. My personal feeling is I don't see any reason why the Chatham adapter can't be compatible with the Model 3. I think it's probably, and I don't have any side information on this, but it's probably just it's just not on Tesla's priority list at this point. It could be we may find out in the future that they've decided, you know what, we're just not going to do Chatham because we're putting all this money into the supercharger expansion. Maybe you don't need Chatham. We did Chatham back in the day. We didn't have as many superchargers. I mean, one can make a case for that with the S and the X, that early on there wasn't as many to choose from, so they did an adapter on purpose. So who knows how it will play out, but I don't know. I think one could make an edge case of needing a Chatham adapter as a safety net for some people. But with the supercharger expansion going on, maybe we don't need it. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, I'm going to cut right in on this one, baby, because I know everybody in Quebec is all over the Chadmo thing. Chadmo is huge here. We have a pretty solid network of Chadmo chargers, like the Saint Hubert restaurants, which are very popular in Quebec.
Yeah.
A lot of them have Chadmo level 3 chargers. Yeah. And you see them all over the place. I mean, on the road network, the Circuit Electrique has a ton of them. So Quebec is very well outfitted. If you want to go into any of the rural areas or a lot of the major highways, there's an excellent Chathamo network, but we're still a little thin on superchargers. I mean, that is being built out. I mean, on the major highways, it's doing well, but we're still a little ways off. And particularly for you, Trev, you should appreciate this. Going out to the Maritimes, Chathamo would be your only option in a lot of areas. So for anywhere east of Ontario, like Quebec and going into the Maritimes, the Chathamo thing, at least for Quebec right now, is a pretty important one. And I know since we have a huge number of cars on order here, we're not to be trifled with, Tesla. We want our Chathamo. You cannot ignore us. We are an important demographic. So please get on that. I mean, I think the only question I have is can the car physically do it? I know early on, there's a lot of people arguing that there was a hardware issue, that the early cars didn't even have the hardware. I don't know if that's been debunked or not. If it's down to software, like really? How hard could it be?
Well, it's a connector at the end of the day, and there's firmware involved. So, I don't see any physical reason why they couldn't do it. Why there's a holdup, I have no idea. Yeah, you make a point about the Chathamo thing, and sometimes I forget a little bit because we have so many kind of being bailed out here in the Greater Toronto area where I'm at. As far as your situation about me going out east, I mean, I had some conversations with Nova Scotia Power, who had announced that they had put 12 or 13 Chathamo adapters all over the province, and I said, are they going to be open by the end of July, because that's when I'm going out east? And they said yes. So anyway, we haven't quite made up our mind whether we're actually committed to going out east this summer yet. So we'll reserve judgment. We may decide to wait and maybe do it on the supercharger network when it's fully deployed next year. It's still up in the air, so we could basically pack our bags and leave on a moment's notice if we need to. So yeah, you make a point about that. I'd really like to see some clarification. I've been bothering Elon on Twitter whenever I get a chance once in a while, just to try and pick his brain, see what's the deal here, and have yet to hear any answer on that. So let's get back into these questions here. So Nuke Sean had also asked here, enhanced autopilot needs a limit up to 90. No, what he says, he needs a limit up to 90 kilometers per hour from 70 kilometers per hour for usefulness on secondary 80-kilometer roads. Is that possible? I don't have an answer on that. I don't use it on secondary roads. I only use it on the main highways. Yeah, not too sure what's going on with that. I think in due time, a lot of these speed limits will be lifted or raised once the confidence in the neural network continues to improve. We've seen 2 huge improvements to autopilot this year alone. We're not done on that front yet. So I think if you want to use it on the roads, just a little bit more patience. I think we'll see some more updates. And his last question before we move on to a couple more here, he's asking about Model 3 is both steel and aluminum. What can we do to rust-proof the Model 3? Now, I had asked this question very specifically at the second to last Tesla meeting here in Ontario that I had, because they actually had it at the first certified auto repair body shop by Tesla in all of Canada. And I asked them about the situation with that. And they said, they say it's perfectly fine if you want to do rust proofing. The only thing that they suggest is that make sure that whoever you use for rust proofing does not do the puncture type, where they will drill holes in the body to get into hidden areas, because they could potentially go through two dissimilar pieces of metal, And when you do that, you could introduce shavings into the areas where it could cause premature corrosion. So make sure that if you do any rust proofing on the Model 3, that it's not the puncture type and it's just, strictly the the spray sealant type. My personal opinion, if you want it, I am not doing it to my X. The battery pack is a complete piece of aluminum. All of the exposed areas other than the steering linkages or the suspension linkages are not exposed. So every spring I am going to get in the habit of doing a very deep cleaning on the car with the pressure washer and taking the frunk apart. I already did a video on that if you want to see that process. And just inspecting for any kind of corrosion and just, taking care of it then. But they didn't say to me yes or no. They said, we don't care. Just make sure you don't do it the wrong way. So I hope that helps. Let's moving on to another question here. Another gentleman, Glenn Ma asks, my Model 3 is on order. I'm just wondering your thoughts on additional paint correction done to your cars, 3M wrap or ceramic coating. Okay, this is a very common question because a lot of people that have Teslas are doing these wraps and ceramic coating. And I've had this discussion with people in person many times. My personal opinion, if you can budget for it, do both. If you cannot, you have to make a choice, one or the other. Do you want a car that's easier to wash, meaning ceramic coating, or do you want paint protection film, which is protection against rock chips? So those are your choices. Obviously, like I said, if you can budget, please do both, but otherwise, that's really where it boils down to. Have any of you done anything on your cars yet? Michael or Eric, have you done any kind of protection on your cars yet?
I have not. I know you had that really fantastic video you did with your pal up in Canada. I would say if you can, maybe perhaps in the link or some description of this video, maybe put some helpful links for just information about where people can go to get some more information. Because even I, as an owner, would be interested just finding out more about each technology to find out if one or the other or both are going to be good for where Michael and I live here in South Florida.
Yeah, that's a good point. I did do a video prior to that big one where when I went to visit Fabian, he actually explained a lot of things to me and actually showed me differences between two different popular paint protection films. So if you want, I'll put a link in the video or in the podcast description if you guys want to watch that video. So it basically explains the differences between paint protection. As far as ceramic coatings are concerned, there's a lot of brand names out there. I use Fine Lab. They're one of the sponsors of the podcast and the website. Love their product. Theirs is special because it has some self-healing properties. So there's a video on their website. You can check it out at FineLab. That's FEYNLAB.com. They have a little video where they actually scratch the surface and just apply heat and the scratches disappear. Not all ceramic coatings are like that. Not all of theirs are like that. So there are specific ones you have to pick in order to do that. I love the ceramic coating on my car. It makes washing the car so much easier. You can practically wash it without using a pressure washer. I mean, if it's really dirty, you got to take off some of that stuff. Michael, I took your advice and I bought some extra products, and I did do 2 washes with my car using the O&R product, which of course gets a lot of attention on the internet, and I'm very thoroughly impressed with that. So I may do a video on that, just to explain what's going on with the O&R, which is the Optimum no rinse product. I really like that. But if you have a ceramic coating on your car, it really does make washing your car, even if you're just a weekend warrior, so much easier rather than always taking it to the detailer. So that's my little spiel on that. Then Glenn asks another question here. He says, also, do any must-do things as soon as you get your Model 3, things that you should have ready besides your home charging setup, of course. Have you guys got any thoughts on that? Like, have you guys done anything to your car as soon as you got it other than getting your charging setup?
Well, I've started to get the mod itch, so I
see some of your
slowly keep doing things to the car. I would make a joke and say, prepare for your cheeks to hurt because you're going to get the Tesla grin, and it's going to be stuck for a little while. Once you get past that, I mean, you're obviously the ceramic coating, the paint protection, if you're going to do that. Window tinting is pretty straightforward and obvious. And then you get into the whole slew of things, chrome deletes and changing out the wheels, all sorts of interior trim kits.
Wheels, more
lighting
wheels.
options.
Need more wheels.
Wheels.
Fast wheels.
Puddle lights. Everyone needs puddle lights. There's no end to modifications. When you get an enthusiast car, there's always going to be a lot of options. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree with you because let's face it, when they're making basically 2 wheel styles in 6 or 7 colors, I mean, and all the cars are the same, I mean, you're going to want to personalize it somehow. I've done my share of little things. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as a chrome delete because I mean, Tesla's use of chrome is very delicate and judicious. I don't think there's any need for it, but that's a personal thing. Wheels, yes, I agree with that. There's some nice wheels out there. Ian, you can put a plug in if you want, for sure.
Fast wheels, rail and alloy.
Yeah, and I just put a set of performance pedals, that the same ones you got there, Michael. I just literally got them in the mail yesterday, so I threw those on the car. It looks good. I mean, it doesn't make the car brake any faster, but it does look good.
I'm going to throw another one in. I was just drooling over Mountain Pass Performance's website today. Our friend Sasha, a lot of you out there might have seen some of the YouTube and some of the stuff they posted up. This is the fellow that managed to put away, was it a Porsche Cayman or a Boxster at a solo event at a track in Ontario recently, and they took home fastest time of day, I think. Certainly in their class, they won their class with a Model 3, and all he's got on the car is a big brake kit and some performance wheels, and he just murdered the competition with it. And they've got some beautiful stuff. One of the things they make is a really nice performance upgrade for the brakes. They're 365 millimeter slotted rotors with the correct bracket to take the factory 4-piston caliper and relocate it, and that's like $1,300 US or something, and it's a fantastic performance upgrade. So for anybody who's not getting the performance car, just wants better brakes, that's a cool one. And the one that I'm personally looking at and wondering how I'm going to come up with the money after I've dropped it all on the car is they have some really beautiful coilover setups with adjustable dampers and the whole thing from that they've engineered with K&W. But that's a company to keep an eye on for Model 3 mods.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to do you a favor because Sasha literally lives 15 minutes away from me. So I am going to go and I'm going to send him an email tonight. And I'm going to make an appointment. I'm going to go down and see him, and I'll do a video and let him show us all of his performance products. So those of you who want to see what Sasha's got up his sleeve for the Model 3, I'm going to do you a solid. So, yeah. All right, let's move on. We got one last question, and then we can wrap up here tonight. David Scott basically says, with a ton of members taking delivery recently and more to come, perhaps you can give some pointers on what to expect and what is not reasonable what is or is not reasonable to point out for correction at delivery. Yeah, this is a big case because we're still seeing a few issues with cars getting delivered with little paint flaws or misaligned panels. It's not the norm, but I have seen some of them still. I know that a lot of people that are around me have taken deliveries of the Model 3, like to come and let me look at the car, and I've gotten to the point where I can kind of spot, I know some of the problem areas in the car now, so I walk around the car and I'm touching all the usual spots. I think that's some of the issues. So if you will indulge, I'll give you a few if you wanna know what to look for. The first one that I usually look for is I head straight over to the A-pillar. That's the first bar that holds up the windshield, and I look at the gap down at the bottom of the A-pillar where the front fenders meet. I always look to make sure that that's fairly consistent. The other one is the triangle, the black piece of triangle of plastic. The black plastic triangle piece that is just above the mirror. That's like a cap cover. Those sometimes have a tendency to come unstuck or unglued. They're just glued on. So that's one area to look for. If you find that it's peeling off or whatever, Tesla can fix that. The other areas I always look for is making sure that the closures on the car, so all the doors, the front trunk, the rear trunk, are fairly flush and even. I'll give you a little pro tip, and this is something I showed in my Tesla detailing video that I did last week. On the trunk and the front trunk, Tesla employs these little rubber bumpers. And these little rubber bumpers, you can screw them in and screw them out. And those are used to adjust the flushness of the panel to an adjacent panel. So if you find that your trunk lid is a little of askew, it's not lining up 100%, or your front trunk is a little off, you can just use your fingers and just screw them in and screw them out, and that makes a world of difference. Tesla can do it for you, but it's no harm. You're not going to void the warranty if you want to try it yourself. That's one thing that you can do that ways. We're still seeing the odd report of stress fractures on the glass roof. So that's the one above the driver and passenger side. So make sure you inspect that. Some people have been reporting some chips in their windshield, but Tesla's correcting that. In some cases, they're letting you take the car and they will replace it after delivery, or they will deliver the car, take it to the shop, get it fixed, or just refuse to give you delivery until they fix it. So odds are out on which way they're going to go for that. The other consistent area that I've noticed that I don't think it's a flaw, it's just a design feature or just the way the car is designed, that the front headlights, the front bottom of the front headlights are a little bit proud from the underlying fascia. A lot of people will say, no, that should be 100% flat. I have yet to see in a single Model 3 that doesn't have flush headlights completely, especially on the bottom part. So I think that's a design thing. I'm not an aerodynamicist, but I do believe that may have something to do with that. So if you see that, don't panic. It's kind of by design. Let me think here. Is there anything else? Have you guys seen anything on your cars that stands out?
Well,
I'll think of a couple more.
Well, Trev, I would answer also in a slightly different way than obviously we could point out a couple other things too. There's no right or wrong answer to this question. It's really you look over your car and you make a determination on your satisfaction level with it. If there's anything that's not right with it, it should be documented, whether it gets fixed before you take delivery or it gets fixed after. Tesla's a stand-up company. I have to say, I'd give a plug to my mobile service ranger. I've been bugging him nonstop, and I even end every message to him with, please tell me if I'm bugging you, and I will stop. And he always says back to me almost immediately, you can call or text me anytime. I don't care. I'm here for you, whatever you need. And that's just the type of service you can come to expect. I don't mean that to sound like I have a lot of issues with the car, because I don't. It's more bugging him for software updates, which I shouldn't do. But really, obviously walk around the car like you would any other car. This whole panel gap issue thing, all cars have them. It's not a Tesla thing. I count the BMWs and Mercedes that I see every day that drive by. I posted a picture on the forum of my mom's Range Rover that we didn't notice it till the day she traded it in. Had like a 1-inch panel gap on the rear passenger window. So trim around it. It's an every car thing. Just look over your own car, set your level of comfort. Tesla's a no pressure company though. They're not going to force you to take something that's not right versus your traditional dealership where you might have a little more of a pressure situation. So make sure it's right for you. That would be my best advice.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, my experience with Tesla service has always been exemplary. They've never said no. Yes, sir, whatever it takes. They bend over backwards. Now, you may have to make an appointment, come back at a later date. They may not be able to fix it right then and there, but they do take care of the problem. The panel gap thing, I think, is completely blown out of proportion. Earlier cars, I mean, yeah, there were some panel gap issues. I haven't seen any more of that. It's been really good. I can show you pictures of some really horrendous panel gaps on a brand new 2018 BMW 3 Series. So no car is perfect. I'm with you 100% on that. It's only when somebody brings it to your attention that you start to see, you can't unsee something, right, after the fact. 99% of the people out there that are buying cars don't even think about those things. They're just happy to have the car. I'm still talking to people and they're saying, "Oh, isn't that a Model 3? Isn't that one of those cars you have to wait 2 years to get?" And I'm like, no.
Oh, ye of little faith.
I know. It's just, it's completely ridiculous.
Well, I want to add two comments here. One, folks in the greater Toronto area, if you see some person touching your Model 3, just be aware it might be Trevor. Number two, I actually pointed out one of our very first, I might have been actually the first podcast we did, where I indicated that there were actually some issues with my vehicle that I've noticed. Now, I have yet to bring the vehicle into Tesla service to look at them. One is, as Michael had in his car, where the black margin of the windshield is sort of off on the car. Also, I think my windshield glass has a defect in it, where I'm seeing essentially vision waves, where the image is not very clean.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
And I also have an issue with my rear taillight kind of bulging out a bit offline from the rear trunk. So there's issues I've seen. Obviously, they're not hindrances and might be able to operate the vehicle, but there are things they need to get taken care of. Again, Tesla service is really great. Even if you take delivery, like Michael said, and you notice something 2 weeks later because you're just washing the car for the first time, and you go, well, that's sort of unusual. Just contact Tesla, get them into the service center. And, I know even Trevor recently had, I think it was a Model S. He had a chance to test drive for a while his Model X was in service. So they'll make sure you're taken care of, and you'll be back. You'll have your car back before you know it.
Yeah, I agree. Wow, we still got some activity in the background.
Just to piggyback on what Eric just said, it's a great point. Now, I wouldn't chance this. If you see issues, you should document them. You don't want to test this out, but I did report a paint issue. I noticed that there was a scratch by the T on my hood, probably there from installation. I mean, I certainly didn't do it. And I didn't report that until probably 2 months after taking delivery of the car. Tesla took care of it. They even noticed a couple of stone chips that absolutely were things that happened after I took the car. They fixed those too at no cost. I mean, that's the kind of service that you're dealing with. Certainly things that I didn't ask for or expect, and they just went above and beyond. To add to the list of a couple of small things for me, I did do a video on how easily you can scratch the chrome trim around the windows. Watch out for that when you go get your windows tinted, or if you wash your car. So the tint shop did it to me. They said they didn't do it, and when I did it to myself the second time, I figured out how they did it, and then I made a video about it. So watch out for that. But I've got the plastic piece below the steering column is sagging. That's getting replaced tomorrow. And good news, I'm getting that trunk garnish piece that we were all talking about 2 weeks ago installed tomorrow as well. One other common issue spot, it's not a big deal, but the right shifter, the top piece is held on, it's glued on also, and that starts to lift a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I have yet to see a Model 3 that doesn't have that problem.
Yeah, so you can watch out for that. I haven't reported that or bothered with it yet. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I still have a scratch on my windshield, and I can't unsee it. And only when the sun shines out under certain circumstances I can actually see it. So even though I've made Tesla aware of the situation, they said that it's cosmetic, and I said, yeah, okay, fine. So I'm just waiting for that time when I actually need to change the windshield, and then I'll deal with it then. God forbid I never have to do that, but if it does, I'm not going to change a windshield just on a small cosmetic issue like that.
Michael, can I ask you a quick question regarding the last update?
Sure.
So I know that with the Model S and X, owners are able to leave the air in the vehicle running even after they exit the vehicle. And right now, Model 3 can't do that with the current update, or at least my update yet. Can your car leave the air running even after you exit the vehicle?
It can't leave the air running without going back into the app and turning it back on.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as you close the door, it's off. Everything's off.
Yes.
Okay, because I know in the S and X, there's an option, there's a toggle in the controls to leave that on after you close the door and leave the vehicle. So that way, if there's passengers still in the car, they'll at least still have the air running without the air turning off first.
I'm actually in the habit of leaving my key fob with my wife. So if I get out of the car, I just leave the key fob with her, and that way the pets are nice and comfortable.
Actually, maybe one of you guys can test this, but it's really interesting you bring that up. I was reading a thread the other day. I can't remember if it was on Twitter or on the forum, but somebody said that if you leave a passenger in the car and you take your fob with you, if they touch the screen either before you close the door or right after, if you activate something on the screen, I think it's just manipulating the screen. I don't think it's a particular function. That somehow keeps the climate control running. Now, I don't know that they seemed pretty confident when they made that statement. Maybe one of you can test that and see if that actually works.
We'll definitely have to test that. I always open the door for my wife. I'm a gentleman, right? But then I put her in the car and close the door, the car turns off.
Right.
Well, some good points there. That's something maybe I'll attempt on my own here.
And Ian, bear in mind, we don't have key fobs.
Yeah, that's true.
No. Well, when I say fob, we keep using the word fob, but right, it's either you've got your phone or it's your credit card or the credit card like device, which basically is a little transponder, right? But yeah, apparently if you exit the vehicle with both those devices, either with the card or with your phone, as long as the passenger remains inside and continues to manipulate the screen, this somehow triggers the climate control. Like I said, this is third-party information. Do not take it anywhere near gospel, but it'd be fun if one of you tried it.
We can definitely test that.
All right.
I have my homework.
Well, on that note, I think we'll just wrap it up for the evening. So, guys, where can we find you on the internet? Eric, where can people find you if they want to chit-chat with you?
Absolutely. You guys can find me on Twitter at the handle ECFix. That's ECFIX. And you can also find me on Facebook. I'll be more than happy to take ads there, too.
Sounds good. Michael, how about you? Why don't you give a plug there for your new YouTube channel, too?
You can find me on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, now all unified at Tesla Tunity. And also on the forum as SoFlaw Model 3. And one last point I just wanted to get in that I just realized I didn't mention before about the update. With the Wi-Fi edition, I noticed that the app connects to the car much, much quicker. So I wanted to get that in before I forgot. I don't have good service at my house, so I can connect to the car in the garage right away now. That's a nice touch. So
Excellent.
sorry, I just want to get that in.
Glad. Good to hear that. All right, Ian, how about you? Where can people find our good friend in Montreal?
Well, there's always the same three places on Twitter. You can find me at Ian Pavelko, or if you just search Mad Hungarian on Twitter, you will either get myself and Al. I never can pronounce his last name. The ball player will maybe come up as well. The original Mad Hungarian. So yes, Ian Pavelko on Twitter. On the forum, you can find me as the Mad Hungarian at model3ownersclub.com. Any questions you have, particularly on wheels and tires, that is my specialty. And finally, I'm wearing an example today here of our famous fundraising T-shirt, which you might be able to see on the screen here if I can manipulate myself.
A nice teal color.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. So I have my fundraising T-shirt. The model, there's the Model S, the Model X, the 3, and the Roadster versions are all available. You can find those on teespring.com. Just search for Mad Hungarian Evolveware, or Trevor's usually good enough to put a link at the end of the show. If you click directly on the link, that's usually a little easier. A cool thing, I actually had a Twitter request this week. It was a nice lady from California, I believe, who requested a ladies' tank top. So we've added that to the ensemble choices. So a new piece of apparel for the ladies. You can get a fitted tee, or I think it's called a flowy. Not tee, tank. But a tank top now is available with all 4 different designs. So even if you have a Roadster, no excuse. You can now get whatever piece of apparel you want for it. And of course, all of the money raised is going to Plug in America, Electromobility Canada, and Lavec, our friends here in Quebec.
Excellent. Love his shirts, so definitely check it out. I'll put a link in the video description. You guys can check it out for yourselves. That's it for the end of the show. You can follow me. My handle on Twitter is Model3Owners. You can check out the forum at model3ownersclub.com. And lastly, I just want to put it out there. If you guys like the podcast, you like the show, you like what we do, please check out our Patreon. At patreon.com/Model3ownersclub. Every little penny goes towards keeping this stuff going. This software ain't cheap, folks. So we'll leave it at that. And thanks for watching, folks. And we'll catch you on the next one next week, same time. See you later.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bonsoir.
Good night.